Thanks for stopping back by the channel. Took a few days off from recording and posting any videos, so I'm back at it. So what I want to talk about today is something that I've been hearing quite a bit of lately, which is the arguments by Antifa for why saying you don't support Antifa actually makes you for fascism. A little bit of history about the anti-fascist movement. I think we can all agree that fascism is evil. There's absolutely nothing commendable about fascism. The problem is, Antifa itself did not get started because people were exclusively against tyranny. They were just against fascist tyranny. The movement dates back to as early as the beginning of the rise of the Third Reich after the fall of the Weimar Republic in Germany. They were an exclusively Marxist organization. They were vying for power, for control over the German people. And to garner themselves some sympathy or some support from the German people, they decided to promote themselves, if you will, as being for the people, which is really a pretty common tactic for Marxist organizations as a whole. They like to pit classes or economic levels against each other. So as the anti-fascist movement of Germany began to rise, they pitted themselves against the Nazis and made themselves out to be the savior of the German people. Ironically, that's exactly what the Nazis were doing. And I want to point out as well that the Nazis were socialists. They were Marxists as well. They were just national socialists, which was what made them fascists. Just like Mussolini in Italy was a fascist, and he was a national socialist. So we don't talk about that much because, obviously Nazism is wrong. But is anything that opposes Nazism automatically correct? Is anything that opposes fascism automatically correct? Is it automatically right? Is it automatically true? Is it automatically good? And the answer to that is an emphatic no. That's not the case. Just because someone or something opposes something else that's evil doesn't make them right. There's a lot of talk today about binary thinking. And there are ways in which binary thinking is very dangerous, and there are also ways in which binary thinking is very powerful and very useful. Binary thinking will save your life a lot of times. Binary thinking can be a very powerful tool in the moment where you are faced with a yes or no decision that could impact you negatively if you make the wrong decision very quickly. There are places where binary thinking can be very dangerous for you. It can be very dangerous for the people around you. And so what we have to do, what we have to take time to consider is, in the moment, am I making a flash decision that's going to be based on instinct, if you will, gut feelings? Is it going to be based on self-survival? And on and on and on. Or is it going to be based on a reasonable, logical, deductive thought process, wherein I'm going to weigh the pros and cons, and I'm going to weigh the apparent neutral aspects of this particular circumstance or situation. I'm going to weigh those out, and I'm going to come to a conclusion that may not be either for or against. It might be right down the middle. Now, this is not exclusively the realm of deep philosophical thought in the sense of secularism or humanism or the age of reason. This is a very biblical way of thinking. The Bible has very blatant yes or no. This is evil, this is not evil. This is good, this is not good. This is moral, this is immoral. The Bible does that constantly. It has a very binary thought process to it, but it also has quite a few areas where there is not a process for binary thinking, but for reasoning and intellect. And we see that in Paul addressing the idea of meat sacrificed to idols. And there's this argument being made. Well, Paul, these people can't go to the temple and go to the butcher shop at the temple or to the restaurant, the tavern, if you will, at the temple and eat this meat because it was sacrificed to idols at this pagan temple, and that to me is sinful. And Paul says, look, that might be sinful to you, but it doesn't necessarily have to be sinful to that person that you're addressing. And Paul walks us through that. And he says, look, yes, there's immoral and there is moral, but there are places that, as the scriptures say in the Greek, are adiaphora, that they are up in the air. They don't matter in the long run as far as right or wrong. And if you can do that thing to the glory of God, then it's not a sin for you. But if it causes you to doubt, if it causes you to stumble, it's a sin. And so that's where we see a juxtaposition of binary thought versus taking a multifaceted approach to thinking. Now, you're going to say to yourself, Todd, how does this tie into Antifa? And I will say back to you, I'm glad you asked, because I'm going to tell you whether you want to hear about it or not. I can oppose Nazism. I can oppose white supremacy. I can oppose tyranny. I can oppose Nazi tyranny. I can oppose religious tyranny, being opposed to Sharia law, being opposed to Islamic tyranny, or being opposed to what we saw with the Roman Catholic Empire, the Roman Empire, for quite, not the Roman Empire itself, the Holy Roman Empire, and how it was tyrannical in its rule. There have been times where we saw that also with the Reformed and Protestant types. They were tyranny in how they handled things like witch trials and heresy. Now, people would say, well, heresy is, according to the scriptures, heresy can be a capital offense. But it's tyrannical, and there's no way around it. There is a tyranny in executing people or using fear to rule over and bring people into subjection to you from a human perspective. So I can oppose tyranny. Like I said, I can oppose Nazism. I can oppose white supremacy. I can oppose black supremacy. I can oppose Hispanic supremacy or Latin supremacy, whatever the case might be. I can oppose those types of fascism, but I can also oppose Antifa, and here's why. Antifa, as I've already said, is exclusively a Marxist movement. Marxism is always tyrannical. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Marxism will always result, without fail, in despotic, tyrannical, heavy-handed, beat you to the ground into submission rule. So when I tell people I oppose Antifa, I'm not opposing Antifa because I'm for fascism. I'm not opposing Antifa because I'm for fascist tyranny. I'm opposing Antifa for the same reason that I oppose Nazism. I hate tyranny. Now, the tyranny of people who hate others because of their ethnicity isn't somehow worse than the tyranny of people who want to take something from producers and give it to the non-producers. I don't care how you slice it. That's tyranny. And that's what Antifa wants. That's what Black Bloc wants. And quite frankly, and I may address this in another video, Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization, And they want tyranny. They don't want freedom from tyranny. They want to be the tyrants. They want to be able to do what they believe white American culture has done to them for the last 200 plus years. They want to now reverse that, and we've seen that in a couple of the videos where I've talked about John Thompson as he went on and railed against whites in places like Hugo and Falcon Heights, Minnesota. The goal of groups like Black Lives Matter, the goal of Antifa, the goal of Antifa Black Bloc is tyranny. That's their goal. So when I say I oppose Antifa, when I say that I oppose white supremacy, I don't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be that way. I hate both. I hate Nazism, I hate white supremacy, I hate black supremacy, I hate white power, I hate black power, I hate Marxism, and I hate fascism. And I know I've said this numerous times, and I'm not going to stop. I hate those things because I believe in liberty. I believe in liberty because I believe that God has ingrained in us a desire to be free. And Jesus tells us in the scriptures, those who are free in me, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but those who are set free by the Son are free indeed. He's talking about several things there. But what we see in the human being, in the human condition, first, we're all born in sin, so we're immediately enslaved. Now, we're in that enslavement to our sin, being born dead in our trespasses and sins. We're also now going to strive to be free from the burden of the law of God. There's no way around that. Every sinful act that you do, every single thing that you do that violates God's law is an act of rebellion from God. You want the freedom to do what you want to do. Christ comes into that and interposes himself into the human condition. God, the Son, and God the Father, and God the Holy Spirit interject. Scriptures call it the incarnation, using, English. It's the incarnation of the bodily appearance of the Godhead in the form of the Son in the flesh, God in the flesh, comes in, interjects into us, into the human condition, the means by which we can be free from the tyranny of sin by submitting to the rule and the authority of God through Christ's atoning work. We are set free from the tyranny of sin. What white supremacy and black supremacy and Latino supremacy and Native American supremacy and Asian supremacy, whatever the case might be, what those things do is they want to put you back under the burden of slavery, back under the tyranny of sin. Marxism wants to put you back under the tyranny of sin. I hate them both. I hate them both. I don't love fascism. I hate it. I hate Antifa because they're Marxist tyrants. So when you say to me, well, you must love fascism because you're anti-Antifa. No. I hate you both equally. Not as people, but as movements, as ideologies, as philosophies, as worldviews, as theological points. I hate fascism and I hate Marxism because they're both tyrannical and they want to keep us enslaved to a sinful thought process. Yeah, I think in binary ways. Over here is evil, and over here is evil. And right down the middle is what Christ has come to do. Through his life, his death, his burial, and his resurrection, he has set believers free from the tyranny of sinful thought, of sinful political persuasions, of sinful worldviews. So yes, I'm anti-Antifa, and I'm also anti-fascism. but not the kind that Antifa is, and not the kind that fascists are. That is what Christians should be thinking about. That is what we have to bring to bear on this argument today. I oppose Black Lives Matter. I oppose Nazis. I oppose white supremacy. I oppose skinheads. I oppose white power and black power, and I oppose Black Lives Matter and Antifa and Black Bloc and any other Marxist organization because I love Christ. And I cherish the liberty that God has ingrained in us to love the freedom that has been given to us by being placed under the rule of God through Christ. That's an amazing freedom that most people don't recognize, and they never will, because we don't bother to think about this with Christian logic and bring to bear on it the theological, philosophical system of the Christian worldview. That's how we have to think. That's how we're going to counter both sides. And as I always end my videos on such a regular basis, sic semper tyrannis, thus always to tyrants, on both extremes.